So this is our largest summit series ever, and well over 20,000 people have signed up to attend these summits in person. We're doing this in 13 different cities around the world, which means that probably by July I have already met all my frequent flyer miles. But it's really exciting that there is such a tremendous interest in AWS and how we can help actually transform your business. So taking a little bit step back, this is always the point where I talk a bit about, how big is it, what are the kind of growth that we've seen in the past year. Of course, we started off 7 years ago with Amazon Simple Storage Service, S3, which is now a little bit over 7 years old, and we launched in March 14th of 2006. In the fall of that year, in August, we launched EC2. And by now, we have 33 different major services. Yeah, it's not only the basic building blocks such as storage and compute and databases, but we've also expanded in response to what you've asked from us in services like cloud search, like the email service, like the workflow service, but also more management tools such as CloudFormation, Beanstalk, and most recently what we launched at the end of last year, or at the beginning of this year, OpsWorks, which allows you to manage the whole application lifecycle. So there's many new features that have come onto this. And we've been really fortunate that we've now hundreds of thousands of businesses that are running on top of our platform, in well over 190 countries. And it's not only that we're doing that here on Earth. NASA JPL is a good customer of ours, and actually all data that is coming back from Curiosity, the rover that is running on Mars at the moment, actually all flows back into Amazon S3 and is being used there, accessed by many different researchers to look for the unknown things that they're looking for. And as always, if you look at what are actually the things that set AWS aside from other providers, it's always thought that there were three major things. The first one was that we made a conscious effort to develop our services such that you are not locked in. You should be able to use any operating system, any programming language, any middleware, any piece of software that you would want to use. Many of these are great partners of ours, and if you go to the Expo, you'll meet quite a few of them. And these, on one hand, may be sort of the more traditional software providers, as you know them, such as the Oracles and the SAPs and the Adobes and Microsofts of this world, but also innovative, very new companies. Take, for example, Cycle Compute, that routinely runs between sort of supercomputers on top of AWS with between 50,000 and 100,000 cores for only a few $10,000 an hour for 10,000 cores. Our ecosystem, in terms of partners, is growing. On one hand, TSI, the solution integrators, the system integrator ecosystem is growing tremendously, but also our technology partners. And all of these technology partners, we put them inside here because all these Oracle and SAP and all provide their software certified for production on our platform. And last year when I was on stage here, we launched the AWS Marketplace. And since then, we've seen a tremendous growth. There's now over 25 categories in there, and well over 750 product listings. What you can do in the Marketplace is actually look for software that is pre-packaged to run on the Amazon cloud, and you get sort of a one-click Amazon experience is being able to run software on a particular instance of your choice. So you find the software that you want to use. For example, if you're interested in experimenting with SAP HANA, the in-memory database, the only thing you have to go is go to the Marketplace, push this one button, and it will immediately launch an instance of SAP HANA for you, and you can experiment or run for production, of course, with the real newest technologies that are out there. And that's really been important for us. So the second thing that set AWS aside from other technology providers is our relentless focus on cost reduction. Yeah, and on one hand, that is driven by economies of scale. Of course, yeah, the larger the ecosystem, the more global footprint, the more features and services we deliver, the more customers come onto our platform, and you get this sort of flywheel that helps you with economies of scale drive our costs down. And we've made the decision to actually hand back the benefits of those cost reductions to you. And of course, that's sort of, it's not very common in the technology world to actually help you reduce your cost. But it's definitely that what sets Amazon aside. And it's not just a matter of the economies of scale that help us drive these costs down. We are putting a lot of effort in actually innovating in the whole world of scale, of data center builds, of networking capacity, and all these kind of things, all the innovations that we do there, all the benefits, all the cost effectiveness that we reap from that is something that we will hand back to you as well. And so since 2006, we've reduced our prices well over 31 times, and this is a commitment to you. We will continue to do so. Because if we are able to drive the cost of this compute and of storage down to a point where you no longer have to think about it, tremendous new products are going to be built. Imagine, when you woke up this morning and you switched on the lights in your room, you didn't think about how much that light would cost you. If we can actually drive the cost of all of this down to a point where, at enormous scale, these costs no longer matter to you, you are going to be building the most beautiful new products ever because you will no longer be constrained by your infrastructure. Now, on the point of cost, we have actually launched something in the past year called Amazon's AWS Trusted Advisor that, if you allow it, will analyze your usage of AWS. And so we'll give you advice about security, we'll give you advice about scale and reliability, but we will also give you advice about where we think you can actually save costs on our infrastructure. And so we've given well over 300,000 recommendations in the past year, and we've actually helped save our customers $22 million on our platform. Yeah, you hear that right. We are actually advising our customers to spend less with us. Because we like to believe that if you spend less, the likelihood that you're going to be successful in the long run is much bigger. And as such, we will probably have you as a customer for a longer period of time. In AWS, we really buy into also the same principles that Amazon.com has, who aims to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. And for AWS, we live by those same principles. We are on the side of our customers. You should keep us on our toes on a daily basis. If we're not delivering the absolute, totally best service to you, you should fire us. And you should be able to do so without being constrained by contracts and things like that. Now, the third thing I think that sets AWS aside is our pace of innovation. That we very closely work together with you, our customers, in actually building the products that you want to see. Often when we launch a new service, that new service will have sort of it will be rock solid because you will be able to base your business on it, but the number of features will often be limited. Just such that it's functional, but that we help work with you in allowing it to drive it in the direction where you feel this is most useful. And given the sort of transformative nature of the cloud and how IT is being done in many organizations, we have to actually be part of that feedback cycle such that we can actually adapt to how you are changing the world of IT and how cloud computing plays a role in that. So last year we launched 159 new major features and services. And actually this year, already in the first quarter, we delivered 53 new major features and services. Yeah, so we continue to drive innovation, and with more and more feedback coming from our customers, we'll be more and more be able to adapt to build exactly those products that you want to have. So if you look a bit at the growth part here, one of the numbers that we've always used was how many objects are there in S3, and I'm very proud to announce that last week we just crossed the 2 trillion objects stored there by our customers in Amazon S3. And that is an amazing number. The other number on that slide is from Maya as an architect. A much more exciting number. Amazon S3 routinely runs more than 1 million storage requests a second. If I remember 7-8 years ago, when we were designing this service, the thing that we expected was many orders of magnitude less. Yeah? But I'm really proud in how over time we've evolved S3 to something which I almost consider to be sort of the 9th world wonder. Because the kind of things that S3 is powering is amazing. Now another thing is not just storage, of course, that is growing here. Amazon Elastic MapReduce makes it easy for you to run Hadoop clusters on top of AWS. And since launch, which is now a bit more than almost 3 years ago, we've launched 5.5 million clusters for our customers. And what you see in all of these graphs is that there is a clear exponential growth. And in many of these cases, I actually think we haven't really met the knee of the hockey stick yet. And that I think the growth, the real growth, is just around the corner. One of the things that I was really proud of that we launched last year was DynamoDB. And so DynamoDB, next to being a key value store, which I think is a really important type of database for our customers to use, it's a non-relational database. What was really important with DynamoDB is that we decided to get away from how normally databases are being managed, which is giving you about 1,000 variables to tweak to get the right performance out of your database under all circumstances. And we thought that if that's all the work that everybody needs to do, tweaking all these variables and these configurations, why are they doing this? And you're doing it because the database has always been the bottleneck in your scaling. So why did we think, why can't we just go to a world where you just ask performance from your database and the database itself figures out how to get that performance to you consistently? Yeah, and so that made DynamoDB set it aside from all the other databases out there. You can just ask for performance and it will give you, in low latency, guaranteed consistently. It comes with a very simple but powerful model, at least that's how we launched it. It's called a hash key. You can also add actually a range key to it. And so with that, you then can do things like give me all orders from Werner in last month. Now, that's a very powerful model, but it's relatively simple. And as I said earlier, we launched this with a minimal feature set. So today, I'm very happy to announce what something is called local secondary indices. This allows you to perform queries on any other attribute in your data model. Yeah, so now you basically have all the power of the type of querying that you used to in sort of the modern relational databases. You now have the same power available to you on DynamoDB. And so DynamoDB is really, truly transforming the way that architecture happens, because now no longer the database is the bottleneck. It shifts into your application. So you get a really transformed architecture. And actually this is a great quote from Jeff about actually our drive to building platforms for others to pursue their dreams on. And again, the word transformative comes in here. And of course, if you really have to think about transformative, then transformers are the first thing that of course comes to mind. And Bumblebee here actually, as usual, has been rendered on top of AWS by a company called Atomic Fiction. Yeah? So when you're watching Transformers, you're actually watching things that have been created on top of AWS. Now I really want to focus a bit in this presentation on transformation. The impact that AWS has had on different types of businesses. And first of all, we look a bit at what is it actually that it drives, and then we look a bit at the different verticals, different industries, how these industries are being transformed, and I'll close off with looking a bit more towards the future. So I believe that cloud computing, the success of cloud computing, is because it fell into an economic pattern that already existed for a number of years. If you look at what's happening out there in the world, there's an abundance of products out there, there's intensifying competition, there's a growing power of consumers in choosing which products to use and which not. There's a significantly reduced consumer loyalty towards large brands, for example. And there's, of course, a lack of capital available to build these new products. That drives tremendous uncertainty. It drives tremendous uncertainty whether or not your products are going to be successful or not. And in times of uncertainty, you need very different resource models. Yeah? You need to be able to acquire resources on demand, release resources when you no longer need them. You only pay for what you use other core competencies, and you turn fixed costs into variable. And these are actually larger economic patterns that have already been going on for almost decades. For example, this is something that you're already used to in the world of HR. When you actually have a lot more work to be done in your organization, you will hire temporary people, you will bring them in, you will release them when you no longer need them. If you have a need for a particular competency, you will hire that person for a particular period of time. When you no longer need them, you will let them go. And so these are patterns that have been going on in terms of resource management for a very long period of time. And cloud computing, when Amazon brought these new types of models into the world for IT, it fell exactly into place. Because IT organizations wanted to follow this model for a very long time already, they just didn't have the capabilities for it. So cloud computing and the benefits there actually drive the benefits, and the success of cloud computing is driven because it matches exactly what companies and the economy requires right now. So if you look a bit at the traditional benefits, I think cloud computing is not defined by the technologies, it's really defined by its benefits. And of course, the first one, the most obvious one, is that you no longer need to put capital on the table. We need to do that. We do that for you. So you can shift all your capital expense to move over to variable expense. For example, Samsung builds beautiful smart TVs. But as all the devices these days, it's actually not about the TV or not about the device. It's about the software that runs on the device. And the software needs to connect in real time to the data sources that it needs. And this smart hub by Samsung, when they actually spec'd it out, it would, just to start off, it would cost them $34 million just to get started. And then they had to build a worldwide infrastructure to do that. Samsung realized that that was just way too difficult for them to do. They didn't have the core competency there, and so they went with AWS. So immediately, they did not have to put up $34 million to get started. But it's not only a matter of just reducing your capital expense, or no longer having capital expense, but also helping you to reduce your total cost of ownership. Yeah, so especially if you can make use of sort of the elasticity, or whether it's coarse grain or fine grain, whether it's built in your application, or whether you switch your test clusters off at night. Some of the studies show that we can get to a 70% reduction in TCO over a 5-year period. And so one of the companies here in New York, of course, Foursquare, is really exploiting these kind of mechanisms, and they've actually moved from a company that was more about gamification of check-ins to a company that does a lot of data analytics and actually provides you them with recommendations about where to go and what to do. Their analytics engine runs at 50% of the cost from what if they would have to do it themselves. Of course, another example is that the advantage that you no longer have to gas capacity. And I've been responsible for capacity planning at Amazon.com, the retailer, and believe me, that's a nightmare. Yeah, it's something that you really do not want to be into. Look at, this is a typical pattern at Amazon.com, the retailer, in a weekly basis. So the rule of thumb was that we would buy hardware to meet 15% over expected peak, which means that actually on a weekly basis, you have about 40% of your capacity sitting idle. Yeah, but that's actually many enterprises would be happy if they would actually get to a point where they would have 60% utilization of their resources. But if you look at the graph for November with the big peaks at the end of the month, if you do 15% over peak, you would actually, for the month of November, Amazon.com would almost 75% of your capacity would be sitting there unused, purely because we would have no elasticity. Amazon.com, the US website over, and in 2011 we moved all of the international websites over to AWS, and now we're able to grow on a single machine basis. Yeah? Whatever, exactly out of scale to whatever capacity is needed, and we almost never waste any capacity anymore. But so we can talk a lot about cost savings and things like that. And most of our customers will tell you that they often came to us with a cost picture in mind, but it is the agility, the ability for them to actually innovate and experiment that they now have, that they didn't have before. And it's really, this is a famous quote from Giorito that says, if you want to increase innovation, you have to reduce the cost of failure. And the cost of failure in this world actually drives close to zero. Because in the old world, just to be able to experiment, to think about new products, you actually had to put a lot of capital and millions of dollars on forehand to be able to do that. In the world of AWS, you can do many experiments at the same time, and actually almost, if it really fails, if there's nobody that wants to use your product, you probably haven't spent any money with us either. And as I said earlier on, one of the more important parts of the whole new resource model is that you have to use others' core competence. That you have to stop wasting time and effort on things that do not matter for your customer. And one of those things is actually running your infrastructure. It is not a differentiator for your business. The differentiator is what beautiful products do you build on top of this infrastructure. And so you have to stop investing in things that are just undifferentiating heavy lifting. And the cloud computing helps you with that. The same as if you want to go global, you can do this in a minute. From your desktop, you can push one button and you can launch a whole cluster of servers in Japan, in Singapore, in Australia, in South America, or in Europe. So these are sort of the, just to recap, sort of these are the 6 main benefits. And as you see, none of them are technical. They're all business and application and product benefits. And of course, I'm always proud that there is actually sort of a 7th point there. Is that it's also the basis for building a whole new world of applications. And you go to YouTube and look at my presentation at the reInvent from last year, where I dive deep into how those new architectures are looking like. And for example, one of them, and you saw earlier on, Harper Reed talked about it, this is just 1/3 of the whole, let's say, layout of the application that the Obama for America campaign used on top of AWS. Go to this URL, awsofa.info, and you'll get you in detail. You can click into how their architecture was built on top of AWS. So the old world here is really about where development happens in years. Often your products are sort of next generation products, and that really indicates. It's not like this is very agile, fast moving, responding to your customers very rapidly. And the experimentation, really getting new products into the market, is very expensive. On AWS, however, you can actually launch anything you do in minutes. There's no upfront cost. It's purely elastic. So this whole world is radically different. Clinical trials are being conducted. It's something that we see over and over again in other companies that actually are in the healthcare space or in the biotech world. Really being able to run larger trials at much more fine-grained levels with much less impact. And the impact that we're having on, for example, on the speed at which new drugs can be delivered is great. Cybercompute is one of our partners. They're over in the expo hall as well. I urge you to go talk to them. Their stories about how they are doing things around computational chemistry are just amazing. They are revolutionizing the speed at which drugs can be delivered these days. So I've talked mainly now what actually drives sort of these transformations that we're seeing. What is the power of cloud computing? What are the bigger economic patterns? And maybe it's interesting to go look at a number of industry verticals that are experiencing some of these transformations. And it is actually, I had the great luxury of actually being able to pick any vertical that I wanted. Because almost every industry vertical these days is making use of the Amazon Web Services and sees a radical transformation in the way that they build products, the speed at which they can bring products to market, and the cost of delivering those products. And I just picked a few just because I think they're interesting stories. So something that is maybe not very sexy is the insurance business. And insurance business is one that is under quite a bit of pressure. Because as we talked earlier on about the bigger economic patterns, there is really intense competition in the insurance world. And it's very price sensitive, and much of it is actually driven by data. And so most of these companies actually have huge capacity requirements if they really want to execute on their data well, but they only need it for half a day a week or something like that. And so before this, they would be able to run with much coarse-grained algorithm, there would be much more guesswork, or they would have to invest significantly in huge compute farms to support that one operation a week. And it's not only that it's about computation, it's also about large data farms. Yeah, really, the amount of data is increasing rapidly for this. And there is traditional companies like Farmers Insurance that actually do all of their data analytics on top of this platform, but we also see a lot of innovation in new companies being built. And the Climate Corporation is one of them. They are building a complete new radical approach to insuring farmers. And so farmers can sign up with Climate Corp to get an insurance that in case there's bad weather and the crop yield is not what they expected, they can actually supplement their income to that particular level. And the new thing about this Climate Corps is that there's never any personal interaction there's no agent that actually visits you on site and tests whether you're actually speaking the truth about crops that you lost. They are completely data driven. And so once a week they run, or once a month they run through these massive scenarios where they have about 5 trillion data points and they use about 5,000 cores in EMR just to run through their models and understand where in the US bad weather occurred and which of the farmers should be actually return money on their policy. And one of the things that is really driving their use of AWS is that the growth in data is substantial for them. They are looking for more and more data sources. So in the past year, they saw about a 15x growth in their data sources. If they would have to do this on-premise, they would not have been able to build this business. The massive amounts of capital they would have needed to actually be able to execute on this would not make their business cost-effective at all. Now, another one, of course, in New York that is pretty interesting is the one about financial services. There's extreme competition in this world as well. Many new products are being developed, many experiments are being done with delivering new products, and often it's the internet channel that is actually is the new delivery model for many of these services. But of course, this is a world that is subject to very strict regulatory compliance and security requirements. And we see that many of these banks are able to run their services on top of AWS. And on one hand, that may be doing risk analysis, sort of large-scale HPC on top of our platform, all the way to the other end by delivering mobile experiences, by delivering internet banking on top of AWS. Players in those world are building platforms for others to use based on their core competency. And actually NASDAQ has been not just a great partner, they've They were one of the earliest customers of AWS. There's an application that the data group at the Nasdaq has called Market Replay. They store all of their historical market data in Amazon S3, and this application can read that data from S3 to build, to allow you to research historical data. And the Nasdaq started realizing how valuable the data was that they had stored in S3, that they worked with one of our partners, X9, to actually put an API on top of this. So now historical market data is available for everyone through this interface, through this API. That Nasdaq provides to whoever wants to use it. So another area, another vertical that is of course very big here in New York is media and advertising. But media and advertising is a bit in, how shall I say, in disarray at the moment. This is a graph of advertising revenue handed out by the Newspaper Association of America. As you can see, revenue from advertising is below 1950s levels. And online has helped a little bit, but not much. So for all of these businesses in media and advertising, they're all working really hard to actually find new ways to monetize their content. And of course, there's many new players coming into this world as well. So the competitive landscape is changing dramatically, and there's very tough competition there. And so what you're seeing is that almost every large media brand that you can think of is an Amazon Web Services customer. They are all looking for how to actually build new products very rapidly, get them in the hands of their customers quickly, and then iterate and bringing it further. A good example is the Telegraph in the UK. That, for example, is taking fashion content from all of their different properties, bringing it together in a glossy, high-quality environment online, where it's not only fun to watch all these beautiful images of fashion, but where you can actually buy every product that you see. So they're merging fashion content, which they had, together with e-commerce to drive new revenue streams. And they're being extremely successful with that. But they've done it in a way that they launched a minimal viable product and then rapidly iterated with their customers to bring it to where it is now. And so visit fashion.telegraph.co.uk if you want to get a view of that. Now, of course, probably the poster child for consumer control, you wanting to watch whatever you want to watch, in which location you are, is probably Netflix. And Netflix is a substantial customer of AWS. They run all of their infrastructure out of AWS. They're a really cloud-native application, and they're great partners. Actually, Netflix open sourced many of the tools that they are using for everybody else to use. And you should visit, if you're interested in actually using those tools and extending them. Netflix has offered a Netflix prize in collaboration with AWS and just look up the details on the web for the Netflix open source prize. It's really interesting. But it's not just the new players like Netflix is. It is also the existing networks are interested in actually delivering content where you want to watch that content in live streams. And so ABC makes use of a partner called Uplink. They stream to this one server that Uplink puts on premise with ABC, and then it splits it up in multiple streams, moves it all over to AWS, and in real time, all of these streams are being transcoded exactly for the device that you're watching the stream on, in real time. And they also do ad insertion based on the location where you are. All of this happens in real time, 100% on AWS. But it's not just all this new content. It is actually quite a few of these organizations are also moving substantial pieces of their traditional infrastructure onto AWS. News International in the UK that, for example, has big properties like the Times, like the Sun and others, have already moved about a third of their capacity onto AWS. And they saved somewhere between £1 million and £1.5 million with that. And they expect that within the coming 3 years, they will have 75% of their total capacity moved onto AWS, almost reducing the number of data centers that they have to use themselves. Another very interesting vertical that is actually being transformed by cloud computing is not maybe something that is so obvious to you, but manufacturing is actually rapidly changing as well. Much of that empowered by cloud computing. Much of manufacturing is actually becoming highly collaborative, and where many companies actually need to work together globally. A good example, of course, is that for example, the building of the Boeing 787 was done, many of the different parts were built all over the world and then brought into one location to actually build the airplane itself. And that's a good example. Autodesk powers many of those. Yeah, and so Autodesk makes use of Amazon's virtual private cloud to get exactly the capacity they need for the collaborations that are going on. And the virtual private cloud allows them to have all the resources in AWS work seamlessly with the resources that they have in their own data centers. Another vertical is healthcare and biotech. Yeah, it's clearly, they are radically changing. There's huge impact, in mostly driven by, on one hand, by innovation, but a lot of it is driven by data. Where in the past, you would use models and kind of use these models to test symptoms or to test things against. These days, it is all shifting from a computational science to a data-driven science. And both healthcare as well as biotech are good examples of that. But I first want to actually take you to a different example. I don't know if you watched the video at the beginning before I came on stage. The CDC, the Center for Disease Control, one of their responsibilities is to actually collect data from all throughout the US and throughout the globe about sort of health risks that are out there. And in the past, their model was actually pretty slow, because they had a centralized environment that they managed themselves. It was very hard to collaborate on that. The collecting of data was often through faxes, and reports were distributed in almost the same way. It was very hard for them to give the public access to this particular data. So the CDC decided to build a new platform called BioSense 2.0. And they did this completely on AWS. In the same style actually that we just saw in manufacturing, with the idea that collaboration in the cloud is much easier. So they built an extensive architecture in the cloud for collecting all this data, for running algorithms on it, for doing alerts on it, and then also making sure that it's healthcare providers that can access to it, the general public, researchers, and of course also government and the CDC themselves. So they built this very elaborate collaborative environment on top of AWS. And if you look at a good example is the latest flu scare that we had during the winter. In real time, you could follow sort of the occurrences of influenza throughout the US, from anywhere in the US. So all healthcare workers, as well as the general public, had access to the accurate data of where flu or influenza was occurring within the US. But if you look at the biotech, there's many new innovations happening in the biotech world as well. So on one hand, the sequencing of a complete genome, I think the first one we did in science cost us billions of dollars. And these days, the sequencing of a complete human genome, we can do that in the order of thousands of dollars. So Illumina is a company that builds these devices that directly connects to AWS to store all the sequence data there, such that you can do your computations inside Amazon EC2 with direct access to the genome data in Amazon S3. So it's actually a very interesting story. So let's watch a video from Illumina in this world as well. So we're working together with the NIH on the 1000 Genome Project. Yeah, so the Pfizer genome makes the genomes, I think at this moment there are 1,700 of them. The genomes of 1,700 individuals available for everyone that wants to do research on it. And of course, this is a data set of about 250 terabytes. That's not something that every researcher can just store on his desktop and just when its algorithms over. So we're collaborating with the NIH, and we've put all this data inside Amazon S3, and everybody can get access to it there and actually to do their research on top of this great genome set. But there's, for example, we have other companies that are doing great work in this area as well. This is Unilever, and they make use of a particle to Eagle Genomics that provide a platform that makes it easy to do genomic computation and biocomputation. And there's a number of great things that they're doing. For example, they're looking for microbes in your armpit that have particular, that are triggered by particular genes, such that they can build better deodorants. Hey, there's a good business in that. They also know it's really great if you see how all of this is actually data and science driven. They're looking for particular bacteria in your mouth that have impact on your gums, and also to see which genes actually trigger that, so that they can build better toothpaste, such that you can just lead a healthier life. And so they do all these things on top of the Eagle Genomics platform that runs on top of AWS. All of this is data and science driven. So one of the last verticals I want to talk about, this is a very interesting one, because I spend a lot of time in hotels. And as such, this is, and there's lots of hotels in almost every city where you come in. And hospitality is a world that has tremendous growth. However, margins there are always under pressure, making sure that the maximum number of hotel rooms are being booked. And as such, there is also tremendous competition going on, of course. And it's very important for all of these companies, for all of these hotel chains, to actually have an online engagement where it is really important to focus on the customers. Because getting customers to buy into your hotel chain or to actually make use of your services is really important. So every effort that you can put in there will immediately pay off. So for example, Four Seasons makes use of AWS for all the digital engagements with their customers. The Intercontinental Hotel Group runs all of their reservation systems and hotel management and rooms management services on top of AWS. They have 65,000 hotel rooms in well over 4,000 hotels. But it's not just the digital engagement with customers or the reservation systems, it is also core IT. Kempinski is a luxury hotel chain in Europe with some of the most beautiful hotels there, but they've realized that every cycle of the humans, of the workers of Kempinski that they can spend on customers instead of on non-differentiating heavy lifting skills, IT, is important to them. They realize that customer service is what's going to win their customers over, not the IT systems. So they are moving all of their core IT into AWS. But there's also younger businesses out there that make a really great splash. Hotel Logic actually has a whole reservation or a property management system running on top of AWS for boutique and small hotels. And they're really popular. They're actually a company started in India, focused on Southeast Asia, but they suddenly became really popular in small hotels in South America. And so AWS allowed them instantly to go global and to actually, expand their customer base substantially. And of course, it is also that the whole hotel world is actually being upset by younger players coming into the market, by what we now call the sharing economy. Yeah, so I know many of my partners and peers and co-workers actually are not staying in hotels anymore. They actually booked a room or an apartment on Airbnb. And so Airbnb is another company that runs for the full 100% on AWS, such that they don't have to think about the scale and the growth that they need to go through. The infrastructure will be there, reliably, securely, all the time. So that's sort of the examples that I wanted to work through with you, the different verticals, how these industries are being transformed by the presence of cloud computing, by the use of cloud computing. And I just want to touch on a few things, how the future is going to look like. Or, I don't have a crystal ball, so let's see a few patterns that I'm seeing right now that I think will become more important in the coming years. On the first day of a baby's life, amount of information is being collected about this baby that is 70 times the Library of Congress. And it's only going to get worse as they get older. Yeah? The amount of data collected about individuals, and many other things, is driving a lot of new algorithms and many new different approaches to actually doing data and analytics. And we already know this about what we call big data, where you're really doing deep analysis, and for many companies it is how to better target their customers. Really trying to understand who are my customers, how are they using my products, what are they saying about me. All these kind of things are really important to them. So we already know that. That's kind of something that is already happening on the AWS platform. But I think there's sort of, if I look forward, what's happening in and around big data, I think there's sort of four things that I see happening in this year and maybe the coming years, is that first of all, big data will become more and more real time. It is not sufficient just to run an algorithm at the end of the day or at the end of the week to give you a report. No, big data will be integrated in direct feedback loops to your customers. It will have a much deeper integration with cloud, because big data, it's not only that it's big, it's real time, you need to have access to unlimited capacity whenever you need it. And I believe that we'll see many more vertical applications being built on top of this. It's actually, the current big data tools are actually still rather coarse-grained or rather crude. What we'll see is specific applications being built on top of big data for you as consumers or customers to use. And with that, I think that the infrastructure as we know it today, Elastic MapReduce or Hadoop, will more and more become invisible to the rest of the world. And we'll see layers on top of this that actually include the true analytics. Because in essence, MapReduce or Hadoop is just a framework for distributed execution of particular programs. It is not necessarily an analytics engine by itself. So we'll see Hadoop and Elastic MapReduce will still be the infrastructure underneath it. We'll see more layers being built on top of this. And actually, there's so much great stuff happening in the world of big data. I would like to invite Kay Young out of here, the CEO of Mortar, that are running on top of our platform. So I've talked about how one of the things that we really see changing is the amount of data that is being generated. And the analytics that we see on top of it, and how that is already in progress, but how that's becoming more real time, deeper integrated, and with all sorts of new vertical tools. Another area that is actually closely related to that, where I think we'll see a lot of movement, is what I call connected devices. And probably a year ago we would have called this mobile, and maybe some folks would call this the Internet of Things. Where basically all sorts of devices and sensors and actuators are all network enabled. And mobile is part of that. Because it's just a device that is always on everywhere. First of all, these devices are becoming incredible data generators. Enormous amounts of data are being generated. And for example, Shell was also, Shell the oil company, where Shell is a large customer of AWS. But they're experimenting with new type of sensors that they're dropping in their exploration places. And one of these sensors is capable of generating petabytes of data. And they're actually considering dropping 10,000 of those sensors around the world. You can imagine that their data needs are becoming gigantic, something that you would never be able to actually manage on-premise. And so there's also lots of innovation happening in that world. A good example is, for example, GE, together with Mount Sinai Hospital, put RFID tags on every patient and on every asset that they have in that hospital. And they tracked that for a longer period of time, and actually were able to optimize the assignments of patients to beds and to resources, such that Mount Sinai Hospital, for the next year, could actually treat 10,000 more patients, while at the same time save about $200 million. So all of this connected generating of data and analytics that happens on top of that is a very important driver in the future, and cloud plays an important role in that. And if you look more at the consumer side of these connected devices, mobile, whether it's laptops or whether it's actually tablets or your phone, or, for example, your treadmill, they will all become independent of the data that lives on it. In the past, when you had your MP3 player, you would load your music on that particular device. You no longer do that. Your content, your subscriptions, your music, your videos, your books, everything lives in the cloud. And the devices are just a window onto that. If you open up your Kindle Fire or your iPad, your content lives in the cloud and you can immediately consume it. If I in the morning step on my treadmill here in the hotel, yes, I do that. I actually want my treadmill to immediately realize who I am. You put your phone down maybe as your identifier, and immediately it should have access to all my content, to the book subscriptions that I have, to my newspapers, to maybe my business documents, to all movies and other content that I own. And where all these devices are just becoming a window onto what lives in the cloud. And we really see that with, for example, Amazon.com, Amazon.com and the MP3 player, the cloud player from Amazon.com, actually really integrate with the new cars from Ford. So that you can have just all your music content uploaded into the cloud, and while you drive your car, you can get access to all your content.